Hello to anyone and everyone who may be viewing this. This is the first official podcast for the Shook Sports Takes, Shook Speaks Ball YouTube channel. I decided to start a podcast in order to run longer form content than I do just on TikTok. I think there's a lot of times where there's a lot more I want to say about a topic than TikTok would allow me to do so. So yeah, we are gonna be here now. More often than not. Of course, TikToks will continue, but this is kind of the direction that I want to go into. So, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today's podcast topic being the signing of Arabici Eze to Arsenal. Now, there's a lot to talk about. Just in terms of the signing itself, the ridiculous fashion that it happened, that on top of what the player like Eze can bring to an Arsenal side, how he's going to fit in, what are the benefits. And so I'm really excited. Eze, let me start by saying, is probably the most unified I've ever seen a fan base on a signing. There's no discussion of the fee was too high or he's not going to quite fit in. Well, there's been a few, he's not going to fit in as a left winger. I'll address that later. But overall, very, very happy the fan base is to see this guy come in, be our new number 10. And the response from the fans when he walked out at the Emirates yesterday was something I haven't seen for an Arsenal signing in quite some time. I thought the announcement video was very, very well done. Ian Wright's always, fun to have involved. That guy just is almost just about everything you could ask for from an Arsenal player. He's a diehard for the club. He loved being here. He still loves representing Arsenal. He's a huge Arsenal fan. So to bring him in, it was a pretty cool touch, I think. But into the more details of the deal. So it kind of happened out of nowhere. Eze was pretty much set to go to Tottenham Hotspur. Obviously, Arsenal had expressed interest, and there was a lot of talk with how easy the deal could be with a release clause. And Arsenal never really made the moves, and it was quite confusing. I even went ahead and made a TikTok about it, if you'd seen it, about how it was really shocking to me that Arsenal hadn't acted in that situation. And it felt like a missed opportunity if we weren't going to pounce on a £68 million release clause for a player of that caliber who can play on the left side, even if he's not a traditional left winger. And then it was going to hurt even more to see him go to Tottenham Hotspur. He was pretty much set in stone. He'd been in direct contact with them. They went after the move after failing to acquire Morgan Gibbs-White. Obviously, the whole deal with Forest and the release clause and Gibbs-White signing a new contract meant that they couldn't bring him in, so they went after Eze, and it was probably a 16-day stretch where it increased by likelihood that he would be a Tottenham Hotspur player, and that was a tough one to take as an Arsenal fan. You just felt, that the guy was meant to be an Arsenal player. He fits the Arsenal jersey, and to see him go and wear the rival kit would have been rough. And reports claim that Tottenham felt that Palace were holding it up. But I think the general consensus is that Spurs just did not move quick enough. They were a little lackadaisical. They thought they were the only team in the race, and they were trying to structure the payments differently. And Palace hadn't accepted it. They had gotten close to an agreement. They had, gotten the easy parts done, but it was just the meticulous decisions. And then it was around, I think, just about 4 o'clock Central Time in America, so it would have been late Wednesday, or either Thursday morning or late Wednesday night, that right after the Kai Havertz injury, which hit, that news broke just around 12 o'clock here. So within 2 hours of the Kai Havertz injury news, Arsenal had made contact with Arabici Eze's camp and with Crystal Palace. It had been reported that they had agreed a deal. It hadn't been finalized yet, but it was going to happen in principle. And Arsenal got it done very quickly. They moved with a lot of urgency to get that done, and that's not something we've seen from Arsenal in the past. We've seen them struggle to just think of January last season. Kai Havertz goes down with an injury, or it was right before Kai Havertz went down with an injury, excuse me. Bukayo Saka goes down with an injury, and in January, and they failed to make any moves. They thought about Ollie Watkins, they thought about Jean Duran, and they decided to opt against spending the money, and Arsenal ended up falling well short of the Premier League because then Kai Havertz and Martinelli and Jesus all got hurt, and we really struggled to have anything up front because all of our true attackers were hurt. And this time around, they didn't do that. They acted quickly. They spent the money, and it was really impressive from the Arsenal board. I give a lot of credit to Andrea Berta for making that happen. He was very concise. It wasn't a panic buy. I've seen that a couple of times that Arsenal have panic bought he doesn't fit, but it's not a panic buy because they've been scouting him for months. They really liked Eze, and Kai Havertz getting injured was just more of a reason to go after and get Arabici Eze. And I do feel it probably wouldn't have happened had Havertz gotten hurt, which is quite a shame because I feel we really needed him anyway. And the fact that it came at the sacrifice of Kai Havertz's injury, while we are very grateful that he is going to be an Arsenal player, it sucks that that was the level we needed to realize that we needed an extra attacker. But nonetheless, Arsenal moved really quickly, got the deal done, and it was a here we go from Fabrizio Romano by 4:30. The deal itself is a £60 million upfront with 7.5 million in add-ons. So Arsenal being patient and refusing to trigger the release clause actually does work in their favor. It's only 500k, but we didn't have to pay more because we waited, and that is a really big deal. I think a lot of people were afraid that when that release clause expired that it was going to be borderline impossible to bring in Eze because Palace had the chance to now shoot that price through the roof 2 weeks before the season or once the season already started. So to be able to get him for the same price as the release clause would have been was a pretty big deal, and we didn't overspend. Didn't need to. Palace were very willing to let Eze leave, which I think is not something you see very often. There's a lot of good faith between Palace and Eze to allow him to do that. So that was a pretty cool thing to see. And yeah, he is an Arsenal player now. He's been announced. He was announced at the Leeds game on Saturday. Again, the reaction from the crowd was brilliant. The announcement video was very, very, very well done. And he'll wear the number 10, which is awesome. So on the deal up front itself, being able to score one like that over your rivals is always going to be a feel-good thing. It's always going to add, to the transfer. It's going to naturally bring the players and the fans around the signing. So it's just one of those. The camaraderie gains a lot from being able to pull off a move like that. And I think overall, the big difference is that Eze chose Arsenal, and it's not like Arsenal came in and he instantly chose to go to with Arsenal as it was originally reported. That was what the original report stated, that when Arsenal came knocking, Eze had chosen Arsenal in a heartbeat. No, the actual situation is that Eze was on the verge of signing with Tottenham. He was about to give them their word that he would sign there. And right before that, he called Mikel Arteta. And he said, Mikel, is there any chance that Arsenal are going to make a move for me this summer? Is there the slightest possibility? And Arteta had told him that there would be a board meeting that afternoon, and that just to hold off on a little bit, and he would get him an answer. And by that evening, or early in that night, a bid was made from Arsenal for Arabici Eze, who instantly left negotiations with Spurs to begin them with Arsenal. So the fact that a player like that actively sought out Arsenal ahead of Tottenham speaks volumes. It's kind of the same thing as Victor Gyökeres, who turned down any offer from United. He turned down all of Saudi Arabia. He stated, I only want to play for Arsenal. And I think being able at a level now at a club where we can have our pick of the we have players actively wanting to sign for us is a pretty big deal. and it just means they're going to give it that much more when they do get to put on the shirt. Um, I think that's a pretty underrated aspect of a signing, and it was kind of spoken about a lot when Yikers had signed for us that, a player being that hungry to play here, it kind of takes pressure off of them because, pressure gets put onto these players to perform when they're of a certain high value, like the 60 million and 65 million we spent on Eze and then Yikaris. So a lot of pressure comes with those price tags, and I think that pressure can be kind of counteracted by a hunger to be at the club you've just signed for, and I think that is something that is going to be very positive. Eze is a boyhood fan. He's always wanted to play for Arsenal. He's spoken multiple times saying that the hardest academy he was cut from was Arsenal because he grew up a fan and he idolized Thierry Henry. And there was an interview between him and Ian Wright where Ian Wright actually had Thierry Henry send Eze a welcome message about being here, and you could see Eze fighting to not be emotional about it. So I just think that a player like him having that much passion to be here, it just means that he's going to absolutely kick off, start flying from the gates, and I think it's a really big deal to be able to bring in a player like that. Of course, then you look at the fact that he preferred Arsenal to Tottenham. Again, it just adds a bit of sweetness to the deal. It's just like that extra cherry on top. And yeah, I think overall it's going to go down very well as one of the favorite Arsenal signings of the last 5-6 years. Certainly under the Arteta reign. Maybe after Yikers will go down as one of the others just because of how badly we needed that position. But Eze's not really coming in as a position that we desperately need. Now, there's conversations about needing a left winger. However, I don't know if it was a dire need. It was something that Arsenal fans felt we needed, but the club kind of saw would be a luxury. And now he's coming in. He can play, as a cam, as a left winger. And I think overall it's just the fact that Arsenal fans absolutely adore him. We've seen him at Palace. We've seen the passion he plays for. And I think some of it maybe even coming from how openly religious he is. I think that's something people can really associate themselves with, and they can kind of capture and say, I really like the style that guy plays with, and I love the fact that he is so willing to express himself on the pitch. So, I mean, overall, he's a very, very likable player. I can see why so many Arsenal fans are extremely excited about this signing. I think that now I want to talk about just a bit of how important of a signing Erebici Eze is, because it's kind of going under the radar how many factors this actually tells us about how Arsenal want to not only move in terms of being the direction the club want to go in terms of transfers and things of that nature, but also, what he's going to bring to the side and how instantly he can impact us. And that all starts with, it's another player that is wanting to be here. As I spoke about a bit earlier about the fact that him and Yikers were two players that outspokenly wanted to be here. And I think that always just brings intensity and brings passion. And when you have players that, they would not want to be anywhere else in terms of other clubs, I think that is something that brings a hunger to this side. It's something we've kind of lacked. I feel like a couple of players have been quite complacent or, a little bit out of it. You think Martinelli, you think of Odegaard last season. Well, he was battling an injury, sure. Maybe it was more that than complacency. But bringing in players that are going to push the other starters to their absolute limits, otherwise they won't play, is a big deal. Eze, if he's playing on the left wing, is where I have to imagine he's lining up, will hold Martinelli out of the team. Now, Martinelli's going to do one of two things. Martinelli is either going to work that much harder to make sure he's actively playing games, and then we're going to start to see the best out of Gabriel Martinelli again, or he's going to let the pressure get to him, in which case we'll realize he's no longer fit to be here. And that honestly would break my heart a little bit, because I'm a very, very big fan of Gabriel Martinelli. I think he does a lot of things that people don't give him credit for, and he's been there through the rough times of Arsenal. I mean, he was one of the young kids that came up with Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe in the revival of Arsenal, is how I'll put it. when we were really struggling. He was one of the young players that came in and really boosted the side back to being a big club in terms of the way we're playing in the Premier League. So it would be harsh to not see Martinelli in an Arsenal kit, but if he can't handle the pressure Eze's going to bring into this side, then he probably is not meant to wear an Arsenal shirt anymore. So I think that is the first thing that Eze is going to bring instantly, is a hunger to push us to the next level, to win a trophy. And that is in itself is a brilliant attribute to have. Follow that with the fact, again, Arsenal didn't panic buy, and not only did they not panic buy, they also did not sit and just kind of cheap out on Arteta again. Something that they did, as I spoke about last January, where they kind of just didn't give him anything to work with. Instead, they went out and they got the option that everyone at the club wanted, and they were willing to spend the money to do so, because the original reports stated that Arsenal were going to fill this Kai Havertz injury with either a loan or a really cheap option, and that would not have been helpful in the slightest. You see, even if they brought in a decent player, I don't know how cheap we were talking, but even if they bring in a player that is 25, 30 million, it's going to hinder us more often, because now we're just paying a guy when the starters are healthy. When Kai Havertz comes back, we're just going to be paying a guy who's not playing. That's not something that Arsenal are going to be helped by. And it was kind of the same thing with the contract extension to Leandro Trossard. We're just now paying him more to not be at the club longer. We're just paying him more money to be at the club. And he was one of the only players that we were going to be able to sell. And Arsenal have had such a tough time selling because of high wages, and to increase his wage when he was probably the only attacker we actually can sell is really frustrating. Because the thing with Reece Nelson's the other one that's meant to be leaving the club, but his wages are too high for a lower Premier League club to take him, and he's not really proven that he's good enough to play at an extremely high level to where a big club is going to go after him. Leandro Trossard, while he was on higher wages, was going to be able to prove that he was worth those wages at another club. And yeah, it was a very strange decision to see them do that, but it's not really going to matter now, because he'll be our central cover, and he won't be phased out of a team if we keep him around until 2027 when his contract expires. And we bring in Eze, who is more than capable of playing at that level. So I think that is a big deal for me, that we haven't gone and gotten a player who's just going to fill a 4-month gap until Havertz is back. It's going to be genuine competition, even when Havertz is back, that continues to develop our squad depth, and something that Arsenal have really struggled with the last few years. So I think bringing in Eze rather than going for a cheaper option or a loan was a very, very big deal, and it was something that we've not seen Arsenal do in quite some time. Again, certainly not under Mikel Arteta's reign, and it was a big deal to go and make a move like that. So that was a really exciting thing for me. And then I think the original doubt where it looked like we weren't going to bring in Eze, and it looked like he was going to go to Spurs, has kind of restored some faith in not only the Arsenal board, but for some reason a lot of blame when transfers don't go their way goes against the manager. And so I think a lot of faith has been restored into Arteta, rightfully so. There shouldn't have been a question of Arteta. He's not in charge of transfers. But the board being willing to investing that money into a winger when we could have gone with a cheaper option or a loan speaks volumes to the effort Josh Kroenke is putting in to bring Arsenal success, not only in terms of playing, but in terms of continental success and winning trophies. Is something that's been questioned a lot. Is he committed enough to be the Arsenal owner? You're going to look back and you can pinpoint this exact moment as to when Arsenal were able to go and capture a trophy, because of the willingness the board is to back the manager with money and give him the actual squad that he wanted. This season has been quite the showcase of that, exactly. So I'm really pleased to see the board back a signing when they could have gone with an alternative option. I think that is something that Arsenal have needed for so long, and haven't been able to get. The importance of bringing in Eze, in that he is going to be very good. I think he's going to succeed. Now, how does he go about succeeding? How does he fit into the squad? And what does he bring? Now, of course, the first option being that he plays as a left attacking midfielder against weaker sides that want to play the low block. When you play your Sunderlands, you play your Evertons, you play the sides that are going to just kind of sit back and absorb as much pressure and see if they can hit us on the counterattack. Something Arsenal have really struggled with is breaking down that low block. And I think Eze will vastly help us learn to get through a low block and beat teams like this in terms of being creative, and it just adds another dimension to our attack if you play him as a left attacking midfielder next to Odegaard, and then it would probably have to be Declan Rice sitting deeper. As good as Zubimendi is at playing those progressive passes, he can't really sit as the only defensive midfielder in the side. That's a weakness I could see if we were trying to do something along that sort. So it would be Rice, who's a bit more athletic, can cover more ground, and will do the dirty work a bit better. But Eze could be that left 8. And again, it would offer us a world of dimensions going forward. It would open up a lot of space. And I think the biggest thing is his ability to shoot from outside the 18. I'll get into some numbers later about that, but Eze is very, very willing to shoot the ball, and he's very good at it. So he can score a lot of goals from outside the box. I don't think that's something Arsenal have in the slightest. I mean, Odegaard's, the season before last, so the 23-24 season, he was being fairly, he scored a few goals from outside the 18 and his willingness to shoot, but that extremely dipped off last season. And I think Declan Rice was the only player that was really shooting from outside the box, and maybe Thomas Partey, but they weren't doing it effectively enough, and everything just felt, get it wide, cross the ball, that's how we'll score goals. And we needed another dimension. I think that's something Eze definitely brings. If he were to be used as a number 8, I think you do weaken a midfield there, and you could not do that against the Liverpool, a Man City, a Chelsea. You will get ruined in a game like that playing that style of midfield. That's something we saw an issue with Kai Havertz trying to play midfield in 23-24, and it cost Arsenal the title eventually because we tried it against Villa. Villa ruined us with a strong midfield 3, and it won't work. Now, again, you want to break down a low block doing that, absolutely fine. It'll probably pan out just fine. But I think the more likely situation is that we find Eze playing as a left wing. Now, you hear so often that around this signing that Eze isn't a left wing. He is he's an attacking midfielder who likes to play in the left half spaces. To think that he can't do the same thing on the left wing is very, very strange to me. And I think all you have to do is watch the Leeds Arsenal game just the other day to know that it's not going to be an issue, because Noni Madueke was playing more centrally as that left midfielder, that left winger, allowing Ricardo Calafiori to overlap. Now, so that's not something that Arsenal have done a lot of. They've been playing, since Zinchenko signed with Arsenal, they've been playing the inverted left-back role, and that's required the left wing to stay on the touchline. That's something Martinelli does very well. He leaves the space for the defender to come in and occupy the midfield. I do think that it is so much stronger to be able to do both, and I think Eze can offer you that. While he's not going to hug the touchline, be an out-and-out winger, he doesn't want to get the ball and drive it to the inline and put it across. Victor Gyökeres wants to do that. Victor Gyökeres, the goal he scores against Leeds is because he runs into the left channel, gets the ball, and drives it into the box, cutting it back at the near post, and he scores. He will be able to do that a lot more often if Arabici Eze is inside, leaving that space for Gyökeres to run into, something that Martinelli is not going to offer. And so I think he can make us so much more. He can play to Victor Gyökeres' strength so much more by just flowing through the middle of the pitch rather than being on the left side. And it's going to open up Gyökeres' game. That is how he's going to score a lot of goals. That's how he scored a lot of goals at Sporting. It's going to be quite the effective you know, kind of attacking left side, especially if Calafiori starts to overlap, or if it's Miles Lewis Skelly overlapping and putting in crosses that way, I think is going to be very effective. So I think that Eze coming in is going to make Gyökeres a lot better. I think that's going to be the player that gels with Gyökeres the most. And Eze can still occupy the left half space quite comfortably as a winger. He doesn't have to stay heels on the touchline, get the ball, drive it. He can continue to play his game, and Mikel Arteta is going to have to adapt. Something that is a very big criticism of Mikel Arteta. Once he has his philosophy, he doesn't want to change it. But I don't see a way around it this time around. I think he knows that he's going to have to adapt to allow Eze to play that position. We've already seen it with Noni Madueke. Again, he played a very similar style against Leeds before he switched over to the right, and I think it will be a very big positive for Victor Gyökeres. That leaves me to what exactly are we going to expect Eze to bring to this side? Now, his attributes, his strengths, just off the top of my head, he's an exquisite dribbler. I mean, the guy is very, very good at dribbling, running at defenders, beating his man, whether it's through the middle of the pitch or in a wide half space. He's very good, and he very rarely loses the ball when doing so. He's very willing to keep it, but when he has his chance, he will take it, and he's never going to do too much. And I think he brings a bit of flair, something that Arsenal have really been lacking. I feel like we've become more and more robotic since 22-23, when you had Jesus out there with flair, and Martinelli was still playing well, feeling himself. But yeah, I think something that Arsenal have been really lacking is an ability to just express themselves and have a bit of trickery to their play. Something Eze, and it was something I praised the signing of Noni Madueke for as well. Those two signings are going to bring a different type of energy to a side. And it's going to be a positive energy, I'd have to imagine. But in terms of goal scoring, Eze had 8 goals and 8 assists simply in the Premier League last season. Goals from the midfield are something Arsenal have lacked. Goals from the left-hand side are something Arsenal's lacked. And an extra playmaker is never going to go amiss in this Arsenal side. He had the 6th most shots of any Premier League player last season, Eze did. That is the most as a midfielder. He had the 6th most shots in the entire Premier League, topping out at 122. Now, of course, not all of them went in. He only scored 8 goals. However, Arsenal have very much been lacking players to just put their head down and shoot the ball. Noni Madueke does it very well as well, and it's obviously been addressed in meetings with the coaching staff that we are not generating enough shots, and that's why these two players have been bought, obviously Gyökeres as well. It is a very positive thing to see. And again, Arsenal have not had a player that will just let it fly, and it can do it well on a consistent basis. Ethan Nwaneri is the closest I can think. And Nwaneri was constantly looking to shoot last season, cutting onto his left foot. So now we can bring that from the left side with Eze cutting it onto his right foot, or Madueke playing that way and cutting it onto his right foot. So while we might not see a boatload of goals from Noni Madueke, he will also be generating a lot of shots, just like Eze is going to, who I assume can score a boatload of goals in this Arsenal team. But just overall, his shooting is, while again he's not going to score a lot of goals, it's not what I just contradicted myself. 34, 32. And so yeah, I think a tendency to shoot more often than not is a good thing to bring to this Arsenal side. Maybe it'll encourage players like Declan Rice, like Martin Odegaard, like Bukayo Saka, who we know can score goals whenever they shoot, to do it more often. Eze averaged what is this one? 35, 34, 53. Eze had a total of 27 shots on target last season inside the box, and a total of 35 shots on target outside of the box. Those are good numbers that we need to see produced by more than one Arsenal player. And again, it's something he's going to bring in a tendency, a willingness to shoot the ball from outside the box. Because guess what? We have a poacher. Havertz is good at poaching, but Gyökeres is a very, very good finisher. if the keeper is forced to make a save, we have killers in there now that are going to put the ball back in the net if a rebound comes of sorts. And, you know, that's the kind of thing we're looking for this season, is guys that are willing to shoot the ball to create goal-scoring opportunities by doing so if they don't score it themselves. Thing that I think has also gone quite under the radar is the fact that Eze takes free kicks for Crystal Palace. He takes them pretty effectively. Of course, we saw the opening game against Chelsea where he played for Palace, the one playoffs game he'll have played this season. He scored. Of course, it was disallowed, but he did score, and Arsenal have been looking for a free kick taker for quite some time. Odegaard's only scored one free kick. Obviously, Rice scored the two big free kicks at the Emirates, hosting Real Madrid. But those were both from further out. Eze is very good at the short range, half a yard to 2 yards outside the box. That is kind of where he excels in terms of free kick ability, and I think adding that could be a very interesting piece to Arsenal. It gives us more than one look, and we'll see if he even is given the opportunity to take them. But I think it's something that might have gone under the radar a little bit here in terms of a signing, something that he can offer that not a lot of other players in this Arsenal side can. We spoke about his dribbling a little bit already. He did 129 dribbles and a completion percentage of 52%. So over half his dribbles, he was completing them, and it's a lot of them. That is the 8th most in the Premier League. The last season was that 129. Again, it's something that I don't think we have an exquisite amount of ball carriers in this side. Declan Rice is very, very good at carrying the ball. Martinelli, sometimes it flashes, can be really good, but sometimes he just doesn't look brilliant on the ball. It's something, once again, Noni Madueke is very good at. That's why he was brought in as an extra wing option. And it's something that we definitely need, a willingness to carry the ball, break a man, and buy time for attackers to make runs. And Eze's ability to pass the ball as well is better than Martinelli. So when he's carrying it, if Gyökeres is making a run, there's a strong chance Eze can find that pass or a far switch to Saka. So his dribbling will contribute a lot into this team's attack, and it's really a positive. Now, of course, we spoke about it already. He offers versatility. We can line up in different ways. If he winds up as a 10 or a winger, either way, it is good to have players that can play multiple positions in this Arsenal side, something Mikel Arteta kind of almost sees as a necessity for an attacking player to be able to play in multiple positions. I think outside of Bukayo Saka, there's probably not one Arsenal attacker that cannot play more than one position. Martinelli played a handful of games on the right, Trossard through the middle or on the right. Gabriel Jesus can play out wide or through the middle. Havertz can play in midfield or up front. And I think Gyökeres might be the only other player now that Arteta has in his lineup, in his attacking setup, that cannot play more than one position. So he checks that box for Arteta, which is a good thing to look at as well. In terms of how Eze can affect the team without being on the ball, right? His threat of the ability to shoot and how good he is on the ball means that Arsenal are not really going to struggle on the left side anymore. Last season, we very much struggled to play off the left side, which allowed teams to sit and double our right side when Bukayo Saka would have the ball. Well, you can't afford to do that anymore if we have Victor Gyökeres running through the middle or onto a left half space, and then we have Eze sitting in that left half space. So I think it's going to take a lot of pressure off of Bukayo Saka to not have to score as often, not be the only side or player in the side that is creating chances. Because you look at the first game against Madrid at the Emirates, that first half, Saka was the only one that created anything. And it feels like we finally have an attack that is very well balanced on all three sides, or, both sides and through the middle. And I think that's going to be a very good thing for Bukayo Saka. While his numbers might drop off a little bit because not everything's coming from him, he physically will be allowed to do more if we continue to send our right back to overlap him, and defenders can't be shifted so far to the right side. He will have more space, and Bukayo Saka with space is very, very scary for opposing defenses to have to deal with. So again, I think that works out really well for Arsenal. And then I spoke about how I think he's going to gel perfectly with Victor Gyökeres in terms of allowing Gyökeres the space to run off left, the willingness to play the ball to his feet, play him into space from his feet. Not a lot of the time when Gyökeres is making these runs, the ball is not even being played to him. But when it is, a lot of the time it's being played through the air, and he doesn't want it in the air. He wants it at his feet where he can control it. Now, the one that Calafiore plays to him is in the air, but it's well in advance, so when he gets to the ball, it's already on the floor. He doesn't have to bring it down because he's not the most technically gifted striker, right? He is not going to pull the ball out of the sky and, perfectly. He's a bigger lad who is going to use his pace and power to beat defenders, and it's not going to be super flashy, but it's going to work. That is why in that first game against United he struggled so much when he was getting the ball, because he was being asked to do things that are just not his forte. He shouldn't be crossing the ball, unless it's along the floor, and he shouldn't have to be, bringing a ball down out of the air or taking a man on straight without being able to just kind of run at him. He can't control it in tight spaces, so that's why the debut against United went so badly. But I think Eze unlocks a lot of the attributes that Gyökeres does well, and I think Eze coming in will allow Gyökeres to unlock a lot of the attributes he uses very, very well. Eze's ball playing, again, is pretty solid, very, very good. He's going to find Gyökeres, he's going to find Saka, and it links the midfield to the attack a bit better as well. But something that's kind of under the radar is his pressure, his willingness to be a factor in Arsenal's press. Is going to, again, check a box for Mikel Arteta, because one of the reasons Martinelli continues to play in this side is he is relentless off the ball. When the other side has it, he's tracking back, he's up and down the pitch, and he is so fast that it makes him very, very good at applying pressure to the back line of opposing teams, something that Eze is going to have to be willing to do, and he does do it pretty well. And then, of course, his constant drive to want to shoot the ball, want to find a way to score is something that Arsenal needed, and he will bring in just a ridiculous amount. So, there's not really a lot to criticize about his play. I think that even neutrals will look at this and say, yeah, Arsenal have a baller there, and that is something that is very, very promising. And I think there's very little to his game that I don't like, and I don't see translating well to Arsenal. And again, there's going to be the people that say, oh, well, he's not a left winger. You shouldn't try and play him as a left winger because that's not where he plays. Well, I'm going to tell you, there was a period of time in 2022, 2023, or maybe it was 21, 22, where Emile Smith-Rowe was playing as our left winger. Emile Smith-Rowe was not stood on the touchline, going up and down the pitch, trying to drive and then cut a ball in. Just because that's how Gabriel Martinelli plays does not mean that's the only way Arsenal left wingers play, because Trossard doesn't do that. What makes Trossard so different is that his willingness to come inside and shoot the ball. And when Emile Smith-Rowe was our left winger, he had a very successful season in 21-22 because he was drifting into spaces, allowing Aubameyang to occupy the left-hand side. And that's kind of what you see as the blueprint for the success of Eze and Gyökeres. One of the winger coming inside, allowing the striker to drift wide. We can score so many different goals and just create so many chances in that simple mechanism of the striker going and the midfielder occupying and being a support run or being back at the edge of the box. So I think there's a lot to look at and like with a winger that is not just up and down the touchline. I've always said that I think Martinelli, in that 22-23 season where he was super successful, was because he was drifting inside because Jesus was willing to go out wide, and him being through the middle made him more of a goal threat. And this robotic staying on the left-hand side has not worked for him, and he needs to get back to being willing to come inside and chase the ball and make runs through the middle of the park, because he is a very decent finisher, Martinelli is. At times it doesn't seem that way. You think of the chance that he misses against PSG in that first half of the first game, but he is a very decent finisher. There's a lot of goals I've seen Martinelli score. I think there's probably not very many Premier League left wingers that can apply that kind of finish in that situation. But I think Eze will hopefully show that we do not need to stay so stagnant or so driven with the same idea of how our left wing has to play. And I think that will be a big thing. Now, I'll cap all of this off by saying that it's going to require Mikel Arteta to be flexible in terms of how he allows his side to play. It can't just continue to go down a wing and go over and over again with the same pass to Saka and cross, or get to Martinelli and see if he can shuffle down the wing and put in a ball. You've got to allow creative freedom from a guy like Eze. And I think that Arteta's going to allow Eze to come in and play his style. But, in the past, he has been kind of blunt with players about the way they play, and it's been kind of this way. This is the way we're going to play, and if you don't play that way, you won't see minutes. So I'd like to think that he's going to allow Madueke or Eze to play differently than the expected Arsenal style, but it's going to take Mikel Arteta a realization of, I've got to change what I've been doing the last few years. Even though it's worked, there's got to be something new that will allow us to capture a Premier League championship, a Premier League title, a Champions League. So that is something that is a really interesting thought, is that can Arteta be a little bit less stubborn in his philosophy? And I think he will. I think he has to. But yeah, man, overall, I'm so excited about this Arabici as a deal. I think there is a lot to like about it, and I think he will fit in well. And overall, I'd give the signing probably close to an A+, for Arsenal on the whole. I'm very excited about it and cannot wait to see our new number 10 take the field in an Arsenal shirt.